I hope you realize this is not a concert. You have arrived at a developers conference. The rate at which we're advancing computing is insane. The soul of Nvidia, the intersection of computer graphics, physics, artificial intelligence. It all came to bear at this moment.
Hi Team Value, JJ here. Welcome back. Well, today we've got a treat. We're going to look at what 10 well-known investors are saying about Nvidia. Is it in a bubble or is it a buy? There are varied opinions here, as you'd expect. Some are very bullish, some are pretty bearish. So let's get straight into it and I'll react to it. This is Stan Druckenmiller, the great, largely macro investor, and he learned from George Soros back in the early days. He went through the dot-com bubble. He has some things to say about that. Let's see what he has to say about Nvidia.
When you look at the AI kind of boom here, are there lessons to be learned from the dot-com bubble?
Yeah, there are definitely lessons to be learned. Don't get emotional, don't get crazy. But I will say this about the AI. Nvidia bottomed in October in the low 100s. It's true it's 380 or 390, it's in nosebleed territory. If this is a secular move, if this thing is real, you just don't have 10-month moves. That's not how it works. Even the dot-com bubble lasted 2.5 years. For many of the guts of the internet, it lasted 4 years. The Ciscos, the Sun Micros. So could Nvidia go down materially in the short term from any point? Yes, but I would be surprised if I'm right on AI and the impact on it. I mean, it's already making the top coders 7 to 8 times more productive than they were 5 months ago. If it's as big as I think it is, Nvidia is something we're going to want to own for at least 2 or 3 years, not for 10 months. And maybe longer.
This was a while ago last year, and the price he mentioned there, it's nearly doubled since then. And notice he said that he would be holding it possibly for years, and he refers to the dot-com bubble, how that went on for years. And so he's expecting that. You get the feeling, well, from what he said there, that he's riding the bubble, and he does have experience in that. His story in the dot-com bubble is that he went in nearly at the top, at the peak, and lost a great deal of money, but he made it back. Now, he said in this interview that he hasn't had a down year, a negative return year in 40 years so far. So he's an incredible investor and he's riding this bubble, not for the faint of heart. Now, if you don't know these guys, they're Dumb Money TV, Dumb Money Live on YouTube. They do a weekly show, sometimes more. They've been investing for about 20 years or more. They started with not much money. They've built it up to be a lot. They did very well through the pandemic. They're largely traders, so some very risky stuff going on, which they admit, and mostly trading. Chris says that he's had over 60%, something like 65% or more, I think, compounding. So he's done very well over 20 years or more, and they've all done very well, and they're making private investments in humanoid robot companies at the moment. And let's see what they have to say about Nvidia.
The company once best known by gamers and Bitcoin bros has become the world's third most valuable company, worth over $2 trillion, all thanks to the current wave of advancements in AI and demand for processing power. We've been talking about Nvidia since the ChatGPT moment over a year ago, and yesterday, Nvidia founder and CEO Jensen Huang filled an arena for his keynote, where he presented the latest and greatest Blackwell platform, his vision for the future, bigger, better, faster, more powerful, more power efficient. Nvidia basically changing everything we know about everything from creating an omniverse of digital twins to medical and pharmaceutical breakthroughs to weather forecasting, humanoid robots, self-driving cars. Tons of companies want to partner with Nvidia right now. Amazon, Microsoft, Oracle, Google. But with the stock already up 230% in the past year, some people think we're at the top, that this is an AI bubble about to burst. Or is it different this time? Is AI unstoppable? Is Nvidia the one company that benefits most and destined to be the most valuable company of all time? Is there any possible way that Nvidia's stock price could possibly double again?
Of Nvidia a little bit. Do I wish that I would have been bigger earlier? For sure.
We all do. Yeah. Okay, now Chris, what about you? Because you're talking a big game on Nvidia, but you already have a way bigger position, a way bigger percentage of your portfolio is in this stock than Jordan. So what are you doing? Are you taking profits? Are you keeping what you have? Are you adding to it?
So last year I think it was like we started in late 2022, we opened up a decent sized position in Nvidia, and we really went all in on Nvidia in like January or March of 2023. And then the world said, oh, Nvidia is overhyped and AI is overhyped. And I just kept buying more. I just kept buying more
The world
Nvidia.
kept saying that. The world, every time it hit a new high, it's like, oh, well, yeah, it's.
And you know what I said?
This is as
You know
much
what
as
I
they
said?
can do.
I said, you're freaking imbeciles. Every one of you is an imbecile, not you guys. Every single person that was saying that last year, I was like, you're an imbecile because you don't understand. You're lazy. You're not doing your homework. You're just allowing I've seen this happen before. It's hype. Stock price aside, I think if we look forward over the next 12 to 18 months, it seems obvious to me that Nvidia will be has the best risk reward as it relates to AI, because I feel that they've just basically announced the next 12 to 24 months in terms of everyone is going to be building on Nvidia. So I can't control what happens to the global economy and the stock market and speculators, but I feel comfortable keeping my position in Nvidia and adding to it. I would like to add to it some right now, and I am adding to. I have plans to add to it. I would prefer, if you forced my hand, I would prefer to double down over sell, take profits in half my Nvidia. I'm not going to double down, but I do intend to add.
What I've done is I moved all of my Roth IRA from Tesla to Nvidia.
So, but
100%.
See what I mean there? They go all in on trades. Having said that, they are known to just trade out to sell at quite quickly as well. They are known as social arb traders. Chris developed this strategy called social arb trading, where he actually looks at things like TikTok and Twitter, formerly Twitter, X, and social media to see what the vibe is out there, what the trend is, what people are talking about. And he goes in before Wall Street knows about it, and he's done very well with that strategy. And he said that he doesn't really care about price. He does also do a lot of research. He does hundreds of hours of research as well. A lot of it is social media research, so it's definitely momentum trend, and he doesn't care about the valuation so much. But here he has a long-term thesis on Nvidia, and so it's interesting to see what they are doing and what he's doing in particular. Okay, if you're getting value out of this episode and you're watching on YouTube or anywhere else with a like button, can you please remember to hit that like button to help spread it to more people? So few people remember to hit the like button even if they like it, so can you please do it to help the algorithm to spread it to more people? It really does work. Next is Jeremy from Finance YouTube, Financial Education. Jeremy, he has owned Nvidia before, but he sold out of it. Let's see what he's got to say at the moment. I think he's pretty excited about it.
This company trading at, let's call it roughly a 38 forward P right now. When I think about the revenue and margin and net income opportunity this company has over this next many years, because remember, these trends we're talking about here, this isn't going away. Like, they're just getting bigger and bigger, right? The need for AI chips is not like just going to go away. Like, that's going to become a much bigger need 3 years from now, 5 years from now, 7 years from now, 10 years from now to train robots. Like, we're still in first inning of that game, second inning of that game. Imagine where that's going to be many years out. And so the forward P here, I'm like, Nvidia should be trading at least double or triple that forward P here today, folks. You look at this company, gross margins, 75% plus. You're looking at net margins, 50% plus. I mean, these are just ridiculous numbers, right? So I'm starting to view Nvidia very similar to an Amazon or a Meta type company. It needs to be in every single portfolio. It really does. And so that puts me in this position with the public count. I've got to start a position in Nvidia in the public count. I've got to do it. Like, I just feel like I can't not be part of this. When I think about how much growth this company has over this next decade, to just say, oh, the stock's up a lot in the past year, so therefore I don't want to buy it. It's just a very caveman-like mentality. Oh, the stock's up a lot, I don't want to buy it. No. At the end of the day, you got to look at the valuation, and you got to think about where this company's growth is going over this next 5-10 years. And I see a very bright next 5 to 10 years for Nvidia. And I see a company that you can't compete with them. You can't compete with them. You know, you hear about Meta trying to compete and create their own chips, and Tesla and other companies I personally own. I'm just going to tell you, it's not happening. Nvidia's out in front of all these guys by many times years. And if anything, I'm looking at Nvidia, I'm like, they might actually be extending the lead here rather than these other guys catching up. And so what they've got going on there is magical. That's all I can say. They got the magic. They got the magic. And it feels like a stock that I have to have in my portfolio. Because at the end of the day, do I think Nvidia is going to 400 or do they think it's going to 1500? I think it's going to 1500. Years ago, I made a prediction that I thought Nvidia would be a $10 trillion plus company someday, market cap wise. And the more I'm looking at it, I'm like, I can actually see it. I can actually see how Nvidia becomes a $10 trillion plus company.
Okay, he had a lot of thoughts there, and it's interesting that he's buying at the moment. This was from today or yesterday, so he's going in at the price Nvidia is at the moment after that conference where Jensen was talking. So hasn't bought. He thinks it's going to go a lot higher. Obviously, from here he mentioned $1,500. He has been mentioning $1,000, $1,500. So he thinks it's got a lot to go. I mean, is he getting in too late? It's going to be interesting to see. But those are his thoughts. And he's a very popular and influential YouTuber, finance YouTuber. So I wonder how many of his followers are actually following him into that trade. And we'll see how it goes. There's a timestamp here. It's 20th of March. At the moment, so we'll see how this goes. It's going to be interesting to look back on this video in years to come and see how all these investors, what they were thinking and who was right and who wasn't. Okay, now we have the Dean of Valuation, Professor Aswath Damodaran from NYU. He's not so bullish on the stock as we'll see. Let's see what he's got to say.
Aswath Damodaran, NYU's Stern School of Business. Professor, welcome back.
Thank you for having me.
The one that's priced to insanity, you suggest, is Nvidia, which is interesting because you own it along with all of the others, correct?
No, you bought these stocks at the right time. They were amazing buys at some point in time. At today's prices, I mean, all of the stocks looked overpriced. But I think Nvidia stands out as particularly overpriced. So they're very profitable, very valuable companies. And you can get pretty close to the current prices for the other companies. Nvidia, I can't even get close. The truth is, when this process started, people assumed that Nvidia's domination of AI, the chip part of the business, would continue in perpetuity. I think the other chip companies are waking up. Things are going to start to scale down. So I think in spite of the come down in price, I am more wary about Nvidia than I was, simply because last time I valued it, Nvidia was at $400. Gives me some kind of perspective in terms of at 682. I mean, that's a stretch that's given the current earnings potential and cash flows. I just can't get that. Maybe I'm just missing some part of the picture. But to me, it doesn't make sense.
I mean, you're not alone. That's for certain. Look, price target went up to 800 yesterday from one firm. And today, on my earlier program, the halftime report, Josh Brown, who's been in Nvidia longer than anybody I know, sold 20% of it. I want you to listen to what he said, and let's react on the other side.
It just feels like there are people who are so bullish they've run out of superlatives and ways to describe Nvidia's market position and their technology dominance, and they're just like raising price targets. It's almost on a weekly basis. It's become breathless. I just felt like the chart went vertical and people have just like lost their minds. I'm as excited about generative AI as anyone else, and I'm bullish. I'm just not that bullish where I think a stock should go up, where I think a stock should go up, 20% every month just because the alarm clock went off and the sun came up.
No, I agree with them. I think AI has become this buzzword that people use to justify pretty much anything they want. I mean, I think collectively, AI is going to be a net negative for markets. It's going to be great positive for companies like Nvidia. But I think the laziness with which people attach premiums to companies just because they see the word AI, and you see that partially with Microsoft as well, is, I think, terrifying because at some point in time, reality is going to play out and it's not going to match those expectations. Thanks for having me back, Scott.
No, here we are. I mean, February.
Okay, before we go on for the next one, because they had him back on, this is a month later from the first time, and Nvidia, of course, went up in price since he first came on. So probably not enjoying being back on here. I've made a video about this before, 2 videos actually, about what the Dean of Valuation has to say. Josh Brown was in agreement there, you know, that it was crazy, and Damodaran said that it was insanely priced. And this is a month later where presumably it's more insanely priced. So let's see what he's got to say.
The market's up nicely yet again. So I'll ask you to answer the question I posed in the intro. What do you think now?
I mean, if it was overvalued a month ago, it can't be undervalued now. That would be a reversal of philosophy that would upend everything I think about value. But that said, though, I mean, even a month ago, I said only one of the stocks looked significantly overvalued, which is Nvidia. And it's actually the stock that's gone up the most. So that can be taken as an indication that I either have no idea what I'm talking about or the market's doing things that I just don't understand.
I mean, far be it from me to debate somebody who knows valuation and better than anybody, but maybe the valuation wasn't as overstretched as you thought about a month ago. Maybe we're not looking at things, maybe we're looking at things in a way that we used to, but now you can't, because we're having a hard time assessing what AI is really going to mean to some of these companies. And I bring that up noting that when you were last on, Nvidia was at 682. Now it's pushing 800. I asked Stacy Rasgon of Bernstein. He's one of the best analysts around. What's up with Nvidia and the valuation? I want you to listen to what he told me, and I'd love your reaction on the other side.
Okay.
Nvidia is still not expensive. It's actually still the cheapest of all of the AI stocks. It's way cheaper than AMD. It's cheaper than Marvell. It's even cheaper than Intel at this point, right? So I still think there is room for expectations to continue to go up. I think so.
I mean, this was right before they reported earnings, and it was another blockbuster. So how should we view this now?
Damning with faint praise, right? That's like saying, yeah, I'm short relative to a typical NBA player. I mean, that's when you make pricing statements against a subgroup of stocks, in this case AI stocks, and say it's the cheapest of the AI stocks, that might very well be true, but they might all be overvalued. I think at the moment, the fact that I think we have to accept is AI is real. It's going to make a real difference to business. And I think NVIDIA is in the front seat of that market. That said, though, that pathway is not as easy and as open to profits as the market seems to be assuming it is. I mean, right now, NVIDIA is in a strange place, if you ask me. It's a great trade, but not a very good investment. I mean, trading is about mood and momentum. And if you think about mood and momentum, I don't think I've ever seen a company celebrated as much as NVIDIA. Jensen Huang is the greatest CEO ever walked the face of the earth, and this company cannot be stopped. At least that's a perception. And at least in the near term, how do you stop that perception from driving prices up? But the problem with mood and momentum is everything at some point in time, the fever breaks. And the question is when that'll happen for NVIDIA. It'll still be a great company. But I think the pricing is a little bit out of control on the company.
Notice he says that it's a great company. All of these investors think they're a great company, whether they're bullish or bearish. Everybody knows it's a great company. We're really just talking about price here, what price is right. This is the Dean of Valuation, so expert on valuation, known as an expert. He's a professor who teaches valuation, stock analysis. So he thinks it's expensive, and it's gone way up since he was last on the program. It's gone up even more since then. It's 793 here on this interview here. So this was a while ago too, but not that long ago. He thinks that Nvidia is going to have competition and that there's momentum there. As you know, Jensen is the greatest CEO that ever walked the face of the earth. And this reminds me of Cisco Systems, which Cathie Wood's been talking about, comparing it to. Other people have been comparing it to Cisco Systems during the dot-com bubble. Next, we have Cathie Wood from ARK Invest. It's surprising that she's bearish on Nvidia actually, but she is, and she has this to say and comparing it to Cisco Systems back during the dot-com bubble. Cisco Systems offers a good history lesson. I remember well the stock's behavior at a similar technology moment in time. In the 3.5 years leading to March 9, 1994, Cisco soared 31-fold from 7 cents to $2.24, split adjusted, and its routers, switches, and other equipment dominated the build-out of the internet backbone globally. The capital markets began to fund competitors, even those with systems inferior to Cisco's, which confused strategic planners in the corporations. In the 4 months leading up to July 15, 1994, Cisco dropped 51% as companies already worried about the potential recession reassessed their spending commitments and deliberated. After the coast cleared, Cisco entered another 73-fold run into the peak of the internet bubble during 2000. So 1994 all the way up to 2000. So Cathie says today Nvidia is that company. Central to the AI age, Nvidia has soared 117-fold in the roughly 9 years since February 8, 2015, when analysts were beginning to understand that breakthroughs in deep learning were accelerating the pace of AI change to the benefit of GPUs, graphic processing units. Nvidia had also appreciated 23-fold in the 5 years since the last inventory correction, one triggered by the crypto winter that hit it in October 2018 and trounced the stock by 56% in 3 months. The launch of ChatGPT in November 2022 has fueled several quarters of unprecedented growth for Nvidia as cloud service providers, other consumer internet companies, and well-funded startups have scrambled, likely double and triple ordered CPUs in the process to acquire Nvidia hardware and train AI models. I can see what she's getting at here. Today, Nvidia is guiding expectations to a sequential deceleration in growth. Reportedly, the lead time for its CPUs had dropped from 8 to 11 months to 3 to 4 months, suggesting that supply is increasing relative to demand. Without an explosion in software revenue to justify the overbuilding of CPU capacity, we would not be surprised to see a pause in spending, compounding a correction in excess inventories, particularly among the cloud customers that account for more than half of Nvidia's data sales. Longer term though, unlike the history with Cisco, competition could intensify not only because AMD is finding success, but also because Nvidia customers, cloud service providers, and companies like Tesla are designing their own AI chips. That said, since 2019, futurists have collapsed the time to AGI, artificial general intelligence, from 80 years to 8 years. So anything is possible. So she's short-term bearish on Nvidia there and long-term bullish, especially if, AGI kicks in. So she's short-term bearish, which is interesting to hear because she's not like that very often. And she can see that there possibly is a glut coming, demand dropping off, and Damodaran was saying that too. At some point, demand will drop off. What's happening now is not sustainable. The share price is not sustainable. So we'll have to see what happens, see if Cathie's right there. Next, we have super investor Mohnish Pabrai, who talks about Nvidia when it was at a $1 trillion valuation. It's gone up significantly since then. So this was a while ago, but it's really interesting to see what he says and compares it again to back in the dot-com bubble days.
Nvidia just hit a $1 trillion market cap. And it's up almost like 200% this year in the first 5-6 months. And Nvidia is a great business. It's a great business. It's at the epicenter of the AI boom. And a lot of people think that Nvidia will do really well. I don't have any position in Nvidia, and I'm not suggesting you should go buy the stock, but I'm just using it as an example. I would say that there's a lot of euphoria around Nvidia. And if one were to do some type of analysis of a discounted cash flow model, where you look at the earnings of Nvidia today and you do some projections of what you think their earnings are in 3 years or 5 years or 10 years, and then you discount it back, I think it'd be difficult to justify the $1 trillion market cap. It'd be difficult to come up with a future cash flow stream in the next 10 years or so that would exceed that. I have no idea what would happen to Nvidia. But I would just say that what I have noticed in equity markets is that they vacillate a lot between fear and greed. They tend to at times get very overheated and overvalued, and they tend to get very depressed at other times. And because it's auction-driven markets where prices are set by the sentiments of investors, there's a lot of positive sentiment about Nvidia. It's a great business. But similar sentiment existed in early 2000 with Microsoft. And when I looked at the Microsoft market cap at that time in early 2000, it was over 600 billion. It was in the top 3 most valuable companies in the world at that time. The top 3 most valuable companies were Cisco, Microsoft, and General Electric. None of those would have been a great investment if you put, a portfolio 1/3 each in these 3 investments. GE has basically, for practical purposes, disappeared. Microsoft never saw that 600 billion market cap for the next 13 years. And in fact, it took a huge drawdown. I mean, the 600 billion went down to, I think, less than 100 billion or so, thereabouts. So it was a huge drawdown. It's now at a much higher valuation. So it's done really well. But I think from 2000 to 2012 or 2013, it would have been a very, very rough and bumpy ride. And I don't know anyone who would have held on to their stock through that ride. History doesn't repeat itself, but it does rhyme. And when I look at the Nvidia situation today, to me, it rhymes a lot with the way Microsoft was at that time. If I don't make an investment in Nvidia, and Nvidia ends up being a $10 trillion company 10 years from now, I don't really lose anything. Yes, I didn't make that 10x, but what matters is what I actually invested in, what happened with those things. So Nvidia could be 10 trillion, a few years from now. It could be a few hundred billion a few years from now, or even less, we don't know. And so one of the reasons for the error rate is, like I said, people get caught up in the euphoria, flavor of the day, fear of missing out, and all of these things.
Okay, there's a lot there. Comparing it to Microsoft during the dot-com bubble was interesting. Here's a $600 billion valuation. It took a long time. Some people will say that it was because of Steve Ballmer being and the management going through a difficult time, a transitional time, and it didn't get back to where it was, but that was a huge bubble. Amazon went through it too. Mohnish Pabrai talked about Amazon. It was more than a decade that Amazon took to get back to the valuation it was during the dot-com bubble as well, although it was a younger company. Nvidia's an older company. It's got incredible cash flows, and so it's a little bit different. But as he said, history rhymes, and it also was the way with Cisco Systems, and maybe more comparable because Cisco Systems back then involved hardware, and the hardware for the internet, building the internet. Nvidia's building is mostly hardware, a lot of hardware for AI, the infrastructure to build AI, which may be even bigger than the internet, more important than the internet. We'll have to see. And I do agree with him here. If we look at the valuation today, it's doubled since he was talking here, more than doubled. So it would have been over 100%, but it could go back down. It could go a lot more. And I know that Pabrai looks for small cap stocks. I'm also interested in small cap stocks. And he's talked about this before. If you look for a company that's worth less than $5 billion, maybe even $1 or $2 billion, to go 10x, it's a lot easier if it's a quality company to do that. If you think of Nvidia, it could go to $10 trillion company, but if it's $2 trillion now, it's still hard to get there, really difficult to get there compared to a smaller cap, you would say. But people, as he said, people get FOMO, people want to be involved. We saw Jeremy there saying he can't not own it, he wants to be involved in it. And so it's interesting to see all these investors. Let me know what you think. I'd love to know what you think. Let me know in the comments. Which of these investors, these well-known investors, do you agree with the most? Are you invested in Nvidia? Do you think it's a bubble? Do you think it's going to crash? What's the likely trajectory from here now that it's over $2 trillion company? There's a lot of excitement. seems to be getting more and more excited as we go by. Let me know in the comments what you think. Now, if you've been a subscriber for a while, or even if you're new here and you're getting value out of it, you might like to try the Art of Value Patreon. It's just the price of a cup of coffee per month, but you could just try it for 1 month if you want to. Over there, I provide exclusive content. I talk about things that I don't talk about anywhere else. So I'll put a link in the description for that if you want to check that out. Now, if you're watching this video on YouTube, I'm going to put a link here to a previous Nvidia video that you might like. And here I'm going to put a link to a video that YouTube thinks that you in particular should watch next based on your history and so forth. It knows. So go and see either of those now if you want to. And I'll put links in the description, related videos for everybody else as well. And thanks to everybody who's watching and listening wherever you're doing that. And I'll see you in the next one.